Hey everybody, we're back. Welcome to the show, Round the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you after about a week and a half. It took forever to get everything set up, but we're back, we're here. We got a good show for you guys today. In fact, we got a great show. Apparently I missed a lot. The abortion bills in Alabama and Georgia. Didn't really get a chance to talk about those, but you know, I'm sure we'll address them at some point. Not today though. All sorts of stuff happening in the news, including Nigel Farage getting pelted with milkshakes. That's fun. Actually, not going to talk about that either today. I know, but it's just one of the fun things that I've missed. Impeachment stuff that we will talk about because that is really important. We also had a meeting between Donald Trump and Chuck and Nancy. Oh, did that go well? Well, we'll dive in. We'll find out. Then, of course, we got another Trump supporter found to have been, or at least accused of, running another fake charity. Fascinating. And then fun with Ben Carson. So I can't wait for the Ben Carson stories. It's probably the best stories of the day. But first, of course, we've got Donald Trump's tweets. We'll dive into that, impeachment, etc. A lot of fun in that. And on the impeachment front, by the way, also missed Representative Justin Amash. So that's an important story as well. I will be mentioning him. But I just got to say, credit where credit is due. I don't agree with Justin Amash on a lot, but on this one, he's absolutely right. See, unlike other conservatives, I found that some libertarians are actually principled. And that's what Amash is. He's a libertarian, and so he's at least principled when it comes to the Constitution, which is a lot more to say than the Republicans that you have that are very pro-Trump. But anyway, like I said, it's been a very long week. There's been a lot of stuff that has happened. So now I guess we play a lot of catch-up. So, yeah, I'm glad you guys missed me. So, in fact, a lot of stuff saying welcome back. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, guys. You guys are awesome. Missed you. Let's see. We have a super chat from Sartech already. So welcome back. I've been missed. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad that you guys came back, that are still here, and had a lot of patience for me while I went through this move. I doubt you notice anything is really changed in the background. We have like a similar setup, but it is a bigger room. So we've got a bigger area to work with. That's really nice. Much quieter, too. I don't think you hear the traffic anymore because there is none. So that's really nice. No random, like, police cars or, ambulances going by. You don't hear any of that. This is nice and quiet. And I love it. So, fun times. Anyway, now, I guess we should get started here. Yeah, let's go with the first story, actually. Let's just dive right back into this. All right. You hear that? Quiet. So nice. Okay. A small but growing group of progressive Democrats are continuing to look at the possibility of impeaching President Trump. Now, this is over, of course, the Mueller report, and that has Trump very nervous. Now, of course, leave it to progressives to lead the way on this, unlike Nancy Pelosi, who is now starting to finally feel the pressure and like saying, okay, maybe we should look into impeaching the president, even though it's really, really uncomfortable politically and I don't want to do it because it turns out that I raise a lot of money from Donald Trump. From Donald Trump being president, not from Trump himself, obviously. It'd be a little bit weird, but then again, knowing Nancy Pelosi wouldn't surprise me. Knowing the corporate Democrats, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Nonetheless, this impeachment thing, it's got Trump very nervous, very angry. And so he's going to go on a Twitter tirade, in which he says, quote, "Everything the Democrats are asking me for is based on an illegally started investigation that failed for them, especially when the Mueller report came back with a no collusion finding." So, look, this is in response, of course, to the House using its oversight powers to subpoena the president for documents related to the Mueller investigation, the Mueller report, which, surprise, surprise, found that William Barr's interpretation of said report turned out to be vastly misleading, and that the real report, what we've seen of it so far, actually laid out a troubling pattern of flouting the law when it came to the president. So, he continues in his tweets, quote, "Now they say impeach President Trump, even though he did nothing wrong, while they fish." I love how he's like third-personing himself. Like, Donald Trump wants a cheeseburger. I wonder if he does that during executive time. Donald Trump wants a cheeseburger with extra pickles, extra cheese, okay, and a Diet Coke. All right, you got that? That's what Donald Trump wants. Who talks like that? Honestly, who continues to refer to himself in the third person when he's talking to, when he's tweeting or when he's doing anything? And he'll do that at rallies. He'll do that. Again, I don't quite understand. Nonetheless, that's what he does. But on the substance of course, now the Democrats, they're just fishing for something wrong. No, the Mueller report stated a lot of different things, including 10 instances of possible obstruction of justice. I think that's really important. It turns out those things are kind of a crime. If you obstruct an investigation, even if the investigation doesn't find that you did anything wrong, it is still a crime to try to get in the way of an investigation. The best way to do that is to basically let it play out the way it's going to play out. If you were innocent, then okay, you're fine. Whatever. If Donald Trump had left this alone, Mueller would have came out and said, look, we found no evidence of a criminal conspiracy in, our limited capacity to investigate the 2016 election. Fine. If he had not tried to interfere all those different times, and 10 was the least number, right? He tried to do it more, but his staff basically just stopped listening to him. Or they stopped following his orders. Like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. That would clearly be obstruction of justice. That would get me in trouble. That would get Donald Trump in trouble too. But most importantly, it would get me in trouble. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take the fall for him. Heck no. I'm not interested. So, even with that, right? If he hadn't done any of that stuff, then there would be no issue. Now, there would be other issues like the Southern District of New York, these different investigations into the Emoluments Clause, etc. But that's not related to the Mueller investigation. It's stuff that Mueller handed off to these other investigators. Again, this was a very thin mandate, or I shouldn't say thin, it was a very narrow mandate to look at just collusion within, not even collusion, criminal conspiracy within the 2016 election as it pertains to Russia and Donald Trump, specifically them working together. So, there's that. But anyway, now, what's funny about this is that he's going on a Twitter tirade because he doesn't think it's fair, right? Well, I'm sorry. Just because you don't think it's fair to do an investigation does not mean that what you did was illegal, right? Or wasn't illegal. No, what he is that he's just a special snowflake. Obstruction of justice is illegal. Violating the Emoluments Clause is illegal. But he is, again, very special, very snowflakey. Now, more tweets. After 2 years of an expensive and comprehensive witch hunt, he says, the Democrats don't like the result and they want a do-over. Do-over? No, they don't want a do-over. This isn't a do-over. This isn't a re-investigation of the investigation. No, it's looking into what the investigation actually already found. But of course, he says, in other words, the witch hunt continues. Now, I love how his criticism now is it is an expensive and comprehensive witch hunt. That seems to have found a lot of witches, right? But let's talk about expensive for a moment here. New report came out. How much President Trump spent on golfing? Do you know how much taxpayer money he spent on just his golfing trips? Over $100 million. That's through his whole term so far, right? Now, that's way more than President Obama spent in his 8 years, that Donald Trump spent in nearly 4. $100 million. Now, let's put it in the context of the Mueller investigation. You know, of course, those investigations, they cost a ton of money, right? So how much? Well, according to PolitiFact, who cited expenditure reports from the Mueller team itself that they put out, and this is just a bit of a rough guesstimate because they don't have all the numbers in, but it might have cost around $34 million for the entire 2-year investigation. That is about a third of what President Trump spent golfing. This expensive, comprehensive witch hunt is a lot cheaper than Trump's golf. Hilarious. And that's with the Mueller investigation, as I keep mentioning, being limited in scope to only looking at the possibility of a criminal conspiracy directly involving Trump working with Putin to steal the election, which we know didn't actually happen. A lot of us have been very skeptical of that. What happened is the Russians, of course, saw an opportunity to exploit our election to help an idiot. And the idiot, obviously too dumb to realize what he was doing. And it was like, I don't know. Hey, Russia, why don't you go hack Hillary's emails? Derp. No, he's too stupid to do a criminal conspiracy, and I've said that consistently. He is not a smart person. And so Russia just tried to interfere in the elections with memes and social media, tried to reach out to the Trump campaign, but they were too stupid to actually collude or whatever, do a criminal conspiracy. That's what the Mueller report found. Not for lack of trying. Not for lack of trying. But here's the thing. Even though he's not guilty of a criminal conspiracy of working directly with Putin and the Russian government, that doesn't mean he can't be charged with other things, like campaign finance violations, for example, when it came to the Stormy Daniels payments, which were, of course, carried out and ordered by Trump and carried out by Michael Cohen, his former lawyer. Or, of course, obstruction of justice, as I just mentioned, or breaking the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, or the other investigations into his possible criminality. Any of those things could lead to impeachment. And why do I say that? It's because Bill Clinton was basically impeached for lying to Congress about an affair. You know what else could lead to impeachment? Refusing to answer numerous requests for documents and testimony from figures in Trump's White House or Trump's administration. And that is exactly what's happening here. This is Don McGahn, right? This whole thing is about the Trump White House stopping Don McGahn from testifying. That's it. That's it. And again, if Bill Clinton lying to Congress can trigger an impeachment, then, well, Trump has himself lied to Congress and has instructed William Barr to also lie to Congress. President Trump is surrounded by criminals because he is a criminal. He is a criminal. And yet he goes on Twitter and he screams this: presidential harassment. What a snowflake baby. Sad. So sad. Now, again, he's very, very concerned. He's very worried about this because in his simple mind, he thought, well, if Mueller can't prove that there was collusion because I never worked directly with the Russians, well, then this whole thing should just go away. No, he was wrong. There's more than enough things that Donald Trump himself has done wrong because he is a dirty person. He is a criminal. And he has a long history of doing grifts and then getting away with it. I mean, and of course, that has led to some Democrats, progressive Democrats, that are looking to impeach. In fact, here you have not so much progressive Democrats, but progressives had led the way. Here you've got House Budget Committee Chairman John Yarmuth, who's saying this, quote, "There's a growing understanding that the impeachment process is inevitable. When, not if." That's what he told reporters. So now you got John Yarmuth of Kentucky, a Democrat, on board. More and more Democrats are defying Nancy Pelosi and saying, okay, I think it's time to look into this. This might be time to impeach. So get it ready. Now, you also had a Republican, Justin Amash, signing on for impeachment. Now, this is important because he's a Republican. But it comes with a couple of caveats. For one, this isn't one of the caveats, but Justin Amash is from Michigan. Okay. So I thought that was interesting because, hey, it's my home state. So a little bit of credit here. At least we have a Republican here that has some principle. But really, Amash is more of a libertarian than a Republican himself, and a lot of libertarians that I've spoken to personally despise Donald Trump. They think it's laughable that the president is Donald freaking Trump. He does not stand for actual conservative principles, and especially libertarian principles, which are more, of course, constitutionally focused, right? Now, of course, that's an anecdote, but I still felt that it was important to mention. But most of your rank-and-file Republicans, and this is the difference, are not attached to the Constitution like many libertarians and don't care at all about rule of law. So that kind of explains why Amash basically stands alone. Now, Rand Paul calls himself a libertarian. I don't believe that at all because there's been so many times where Rand Paul could have put his libertarianism on display and actually came out with a principled position. Sometimes he has, but most of the time he has declined those chances and has sidled up to President Trump. And that is just sad. Now, anyway, one more fun tweet here. And I mention it because of the high salt content contained within. He said, quote, "Without the illegal witch hunt, my poll numbers, especially because of our historically great economy, would be at 65%. Too bad." I love that tweet. So salty. So salty. No, his approval rating would not be great without the Mueller investigation. Why is that? Because he's a terrible president. Again, he was voted in one of the most unpopular people to have ever been voted in as president. He is actually slightly more popular than the other person, Hillary Clinton, who was even more deeply unpopular. But he's one of the most deeply unpopular presidents to have ever become president. So, or I should say deeply unpopular candidates to become president. It's just, in 2016, we had literally almost no choice. I'm not saying that they're the same, of course. They're not the same. But they were both really bad choices. There was bad, and then there was much worse. And people were like, I don't know, much worse, I guess. Let's go for it. Let's see how far we can fall down this well. Well, it appears we've fallen pretty far. His approval rating was never, ever going to be above 50%. Ever. But look, the reason why, again, he's a terrible president, right? Even presiding over what he claims to be a pretty good economy. And let me give you some reasons why. Trade war with China. It's killing farmers. He's built no wall. Maybe a little bit of fencing. But no wall. No big, beautiful wall. His economy, which was left over mostly from President Obama, was basically given a sugar rush by his giant tax cuts for the rich, which are creating other problems. It's basically a house of cards waiting for a stiff wind to blow it over. Ford, for example, just cut 7,000 jobs. Add to that the previous round of layoffs at GM, Carrier, Harley-Davidson, AT&T, on and on and on and on, right? No, that's not a great economy. That's an economy waiting to go into free fall. It just needs something to push it over the edge. It's not good. You also have nearly stagnant wages, barely outpacing inflation, increasing costs of healthcare, education, student loans. The defaults are on the rise. They continue to rise. These are not the hallmarks of a stable, fantastic economy, right? No, without massive change, this is going to all come down and it's not going to be pretty. And so, what does he have? What does he have if not for the booming economy? He's got nothing. So, he's going to continue to be one of the most unpopular presidents ever. And that was even without the Mueller investigation. And I think it's that fact that bothers him the most. When in reality, he should be a lot more afraid of what Congress could do to him. Okay. Moving on. Let's go to Chuck and Nancy. All right. Now, how do you make Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi look tough? Well, you put them against a thin-skinned idiot like Donald Trump. Now, early on Wednesday, President Trump had decided to walk out of a meeting, or more like stormed out of a meeting with Chuck and Nancy after they hurt his delicate little feelings. Now, according to a report posted in the New York Times, the president blew up a scheduled meeting with Democratic congressional leaders on Wednesday, lashing out at Speaker Pelosi for accusing him of doing a cover-up and declaring that he could not work with them until they stopped investigating him. I can't work with you. Stop your investigations. Stop it now, Nancy. Awesome. Oh, he's throwing such a fit. In fact, according to a Democrat that was there, he marched out into the Rose Garden demanding that Democrats get the phony investigations over with. He said that they could not legislate and investigate at the same time. Quote, "We're going to go down one track at a time." And what track is that? I mean, right now, it feels like we're riding the crazy train. And not the fun one from Ozzy. Like the crazy, crazy train. The not good crazy train. So, anyway. It appears that somebody's having a sad. And it's awesome. Now, this confrontation, according to the Times, came on a day when pressure over possible impeachment has raised temperatures on both sides of the aisle. I love how they phrase that. Pelosi had arrived at the White House for a session with the president, set to talk about infrastructure, shortly after a meeting with House Democrats on Capitol Hill to talk about impeachment. She emerged from that meeting with Democrats accusing Mr. Trump of a cover-up. Well, yes, a cover-up would be correct. I mean, look, if you obstruct justice, by definition, you are engaging in an effort to cover something up, to prevent investigators from finding something else, possibly criminal behavior. In this case, of course, it refers to President trying to stop Don McGahn from testifying in front of Congress. Because, Democrats are really interested in getting the perspective of Donald Trump's former counsel. For some reason, Trump does not want that to happen. Gee, I wonder why. Very curious. Which, of course, led to much salt. When Pelosi and Schumer had arrived at the White House, according to the Times, Mr. Trump walked into the cabinet room and did not shake anyone's hand or sit in a seat, according to a Democrat informed about the meeting. He said he didn't want to advance legislation on infrastructure, trade, and other matters, but that Ms. Pelosi had said something terrible by accusing him of a cover-up, according to the Democrat. Classic Trump. You said something mean to me, and I'm not going to do anything. Okay, well, go ahead and fold your arms like a petulant child while your stupid trade war hurts your own voters, your own constituents, which, of course, we're all supposed to be your constituents because you're supposed to be the president for everyone. But even the president of the people that you want to be president for, in this case, the farmers that voted for you, your trade war is killing them, is destroying them, and you don't care. You're just going to sit there and go, I'm not interested in talking with Chuck and Nancy. Not even about infrastructure. Yeah, that's smart. Now they continue. After just about 3 minutes, he left the room before anyone else could speak. From there, he headed to the Rose Garden, where a lectern had been set up, with a sign that said, no collusion, no obstruction, one, and gave statistics intended to show that he had cooperated with the special counsel, Robert Mueller III. Oh, yeah, great way of cooperating with the investigation. He didn't even sit down for an in-person interview. And, of course, I believe it was Don McGahn himself who counseled against that strongly because of the belief that Trump would bring him down. Himself down and McGahn. Because he would basically, it was something, they were talking about a perjury trap, right? So if you were to testify, it'd be a perjury trap. Well, no, why would it be a perjury trap unless you intended to perjure yourself? Well, that's really strange reasoning. Basically admitting that Donald Trump can't help himself but lie. And that would get him in trouble. And so that's why you couldn't sit down with Mueller. And it actually worked. And he ended up not getting an in-person interview with Donald Trump. Crazy, right? He just gets break and after break after break after break. It's amazing. Nobody gets as many breaks as Donald Trump, and he still manages to screw everything up. Then again, we're going to go back to the article here. Now, they noted that, quote, instead of walking in happily to a meeting, I walk in to look at people that have just said that I was doing a cover-up. Mr. Trump said, I don't do cover-ups. So that's a quote from him. Okay, you don't do cover-ups. Well, what about your medical records? What about your school transcripts that you were hiding? We can't tell if you were a good student or not. I'm a fantastic student. That's why I will not release my college transcripts. You don't get to see them because of how awesome they are. That's not a cover-up? That's not a cover-up. Come on, man. Oh. Even better. What about his taxes? He still won't release his taxes. What we have right now is basically copies that were leaked of 10 years of his taxes, which showed that he lost over $1 billion because he's an idiot. No wonder he wants to hide his taxes. But no, I don't do cover-ups. What are you talking about? No. Now, following this attempt of a meeting, a 3-minute meeting, I guess, Pelosi said this, quote, he just took a pass, and it just makes me wonder why he did that. In any event, I pray for the president, and I pray for the United States of America. Okay. 2 things. We actually do know why. He's a petulant man-child. Why not just say it? It's not like we're not all thinking it. Even Republicans are thinking the same thing. Come on. I kind of hate this fake respect, right, thing that we have. We have to act respectful, and we can't actually tell the truth. We can't actually say that somebody is lying when they're actually lying. Like, you can't do that. This decorum drives me crazy. And secondly, I'll pray for you. Well, I've heard that before. That's actually super passive-aggressive. But, see, here's the thing. Even though that is super passive-aggressive, why can't Pelosi just be aggressive-aggressive? I would love to see that. Oh, but see, Nancy Pelosi is only aggressive-aggressive when she's going after progressives. You see how that works? So she's only going to go after people who are pushing for actual progress within her own party, but she can't be mean and nasty towards the president of the United States, who is a mean and nasty person himself. I'd love to see her come out swinging. Like, oh, I can't believe Donald Trump got his feelings hurt, and that's why he's not willing to meet with us to do infrastructure to fix our crumbling roads and bridges. So he'd rather sit and pout and about a completely unrelated matter, the investigations into his possible criminal wrongdoing, and let you continue to drive on dangerous bridges and roads that are falling apart. He's putting your safety behind his ego and his feelings. Is that the president that you want? Is that the person that you want leading? Is that the actions of the leader of the free world? Do your job, Mr. President. Do your job. That's what I wish Pelosi would say. Schumer had a slightly different reaction. He said, quote, "What happened in the White House would make your jaw drop." Okay, that's a little bit better. And he suggested the real reason Trump blew up the meeting was that he had not come up with a way to pay for the enormous spending package and therefore was looking for excuses. Let me give you his quote before I kind of break down why I think that's wrong, but better, but it's still wrong. He said, quote, "Hello, there were investigations going on 3 weeks ago when we met, and he still met with us. But now, when he was forced to say how he would pay for it, he ran away, and he came up with this pre-planned excuse." Now, again, that is a little bit stronger than Pelosi. Less passive-aggressive, a little bit more aggressive-aggressive. Great. But, again, here's why it's wrong. He puts too much credit in Donald Trump's intellect. Like, oh, yeah, he couldn't come up with a way to kind of spin it, whatever, because he can't afford to pay for it. No, I don't think Donald Trump worries at all about how he's going to pay for anything. Trump's not that smart. He didn't have to figure out a way to pay for his tax cuts, and he still ended up doing them. He hasn't figured out a way to pay for anything, and he still tries to do it. I mean, he's not a smart person. Now, nobody asked, of course, how you're going to pay for tax cuts. They just accepted, oh, yeah, tax cuts are paid for themselves, of course. I mean, on that, you did have a lot of Democrats that did come out and say, hey, wait a minute, how are you going to pay for that? That's fine, I guess. But they're not as strong when they do that as they are for when a progressive comes up with, for example, Medicare for all or, free college. Then they're all like, oh, how are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for that? But the taxes, they're not as aggressive. And I wish they were, but again, they're part of the elite. So they don't want those things like Medicare for all. And so they always ask that question. It's that right-wing framing. But anyway, now, at least when it came to Chuck Schumer, that was a little bit more of a challenge to Trump than Pelosi. And despite it being kind of milquetoast and a little bit weak, in my opinion, they still end up coming out of this looking better than Donald Trump, bailing on this meeting because somebody hurt his fragile little fifis. Now, I want to leave you with one last hilarious quote from Donald Trump that kind of shows you just how much projection he's doing and how hurt he really is. He said, quote, "These people were out to get us. The Republican Party and President Trump, they were out to get us. So here's the bottom line. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. We've been doing this since I've been president. And actually the crime was committed on the other side." That is more classic, ridiculous projection from our man-child in chief. We got to get him out. Okay. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We have another Trump supporter doing a charity scam. That's always fun. And then we tear into Ben Carson. Awesome. All right. So stay tuned. We'll get to that stuff right after the break. Round the nation. Leave your super chats and your messages. Read some after the break. Round the nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got some fun comments from you guys that I want to read. Elwell with a couple of great comments. One, she says, how about the $1.57 billion that Congress appropriated last year for Trump's wall along the Mexican border has so far yielded just 1.7 miles of fence. That is awesome. And that was something that I believe that I was had kind of mentioned in the fact that it's absolute scam. And then LL also says, when Trump says America first, he really means Trump first, which is absolutely true. A couple of non-member comments. To Beat Jesus says, glad you're back. Missed your show. Well, thank you. Missed doing it. Happy to be back. And Tia Wheeler says, your rendition of the dumbass in chief having a tantrum is hilarious. Why, thank you. Normally I get kind of panned for doing it. Like, you shouldn't do that. It's terrible. Well, it being terrible is kind of the point. All right, anyway. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate that. Keep sending them. I love to read them. Love your feedback. All right. That said, let's get into another story here. Let's go to another Trump-inspired scam. There we go. All right. Like birds of a feather, Trump supporters keep getting caught trying to scam their fellows out of money. Now, this is from a recent report in the Daily Beast. A member of the United Constitutional Patriots, that's one of those border militia groups, has been accused of running a supposed scam charity that preys upon low-information Trump voters. Now, the man at the center of these allegations is a man named Jim Benvey, who is also, by the way, the spokesman for the self-described border vigilante group. So, first of all, that's what we need, border vigilantes. These are the ones that, of course, walk around with weapons, and they menace undocumented immigrants or people coming in from Mexico, migrants, some of which, of course, are fleeing violence and people with guns in their own, home countries and come here for safety, and they end up getting accosted by, I hate to say it, but fat, bearded, white guys with guns. So that's super disturbing. These are people that also would pretend that they're border patrol and illegally apprehend migrants. So these guys are no joke and very, very problematic. In fact, there were some of the members, or at least one of the members, that said, why don't we just line them up and shoot them? So, and look, this group, again, not everybody, because there was a person in this very same group that pointed that out and said, hey, we don't want anything to do with that guy, who literally praised Hitler and, thought that lining them up or gassing them would be a great way to deal with migrants. At least credit to them, they have some people that are like, hey, let's not go that far. We're not interested. But nonetheless, not exactly filled with the greatest people. And Jim Benvey apparently is one of those people who is apparently not so great, at least according to this report. Now, the Daily Beast reports that newly unearthed court documents show that Benvey had been arrested for fraudulently claiming to be collecting cash for a child with cancer, while also being in possession at the same time of a stolen truck. So now wait a minute here. This is starting to sound like a little bit like a country song. My truck got stolen, and then they stole my money for trying to raise money for some kid with cancer that doesn't exist. I'm sure George Strait or whatever can work that into a song. I don't know. Anyway, according to the report, although Benvey was eventually charged with stealing the truck, prosecutors did not press charges against him for the allegedly fraudulent charity work. Now, I'm kind of curious as to why that happened. Because, according to the police reports, these officers were dispatched last July to a local fried chicken chain restaurant after receiving reports of a stolen vehicle parked there. Could this story get any more redneck? And I'm not saying all rednecks are bad, but here you got the stolen pickup truck, and then you got the local chicken place, but it gets a little bit better. inside the restaurant, they allegedly found Benvey asking restaurant goers for money while holding a blue bucket filled with cash. Because every legit charity begins with a stolen truck and ends in a bucket full of cash. Wow. Now, according to the police lieutenant who was on the scene in that fine establishment, because, hey, I love fried chicken, Benvey apparently looked less than innocent. Quote, "When Benzie observed me, he began to look away and became very nervous." This is a police officer saying that, right? So a lot of you conservatives, you blue no matter who people, you should immediately be like on the side of the police officer when he says this. Now, the lieutenant also said in a sworn affidavit that quote, "It's believed that Benvey was committing fraud by collecting donations for a child with cancer that he was unable to provide him the information about." No information on the child that he's supposedly raising money for with his blue bucket o' cash. Does that not sound suspicious? I wonder how much money he raised anyway in that fine chicken establishment. I'm my God. It's how dumb are people? You're just going to give to a guy, like, okay, best of intentions, right? Even if you've got great intentions, you got to think for a minute. Is this person legit? Is he literally trying to steal my cash? It is, okay, what, like the first thing, somebody comes up to me with a blue bucket of cash and says, "I'm raising money for a cancer kid." Do you have a picture? What's the kid's name? What kind of cancer is it? What kind of treatment is he undergoing? Are you raising money for? Where can I find more information? Why is your truck stolen? Okay, then again, I probably wouldn't know that specifically at that point, but nonetheless, it's an interesting question to ask. Where'd you get that truck? Interesting. But anyway, as far as this is, it's super, super low. Look, everybody knows the real good way to scam Trump supporters is to try to build a GoFundMe for a wall. Well, no, that's the way to do it. You'd be rich by the time most people catch on. Because, you know how I know? Because I've already done that story. We've already seen that happen. Or, of course, to take it from the master himself and set up a fake university. Boy, you'll get money in no time, let me tell you. But then again, seriously though, this is very gross. Raising money from people for a supposedly sick child that doesn't actually exist. No name, no nothing, no diagnosis, just, hey, raising money for cancer kid, just put your money in the bucket. But as bad as this is, it does not surprise me, as Donald Trump himself is the king of grift. I mean, that is literally the art of the deal, or you should really call it the art of the steal. His foundation himself, that he ran himself, took donor money and spent it on himself. He has run numerous scams on both donors and banks stupid enough to lend him money. And you know what happened? He lost over $1 billion in loans. Went bankrupt 6 times. And you know what's most damning about that? When he lost all that money, he relied on daddy's money to keep up his lavish lifestyle. That's who Trump is. That's their role model. That's their hero. I guess would it be a surprise that some of them turn out to be just like the person that they idolize? Doesn't shock me at all. Okay. Moving on. All right. Representative Katie Porter is a boss. Now, recently, she's made some headlines after grilling Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson. Now, Ben Carson, again, he's the head of HUD. It's an interesting way to phrase that. But he's not a very smart person. He's not a very good head of the Department for Housing and Urban Development, which is evidenced in this exchange between Ms. Porter and Mr. Carson. Now, during this hearing, she asked Carson about REO homes. Now, REO, not Speedwagon, but REO homes are acquired by HUD after a foreclosure on a FHA-insured mortgage. So that's pretty serious business, right? Now, she noted that FHA loans end up in REO far more than other loans. And she had asked Ben Carson to explain why. Here was that interesting exchange.
Do you know what an REO is?
An Oreo?
No, not an Oreo. An REO. REO.
Real estate?
What's the O stand for?
Organization?
Owned, real estate owned. That's what happens when a property goes to foreclosure. We call it an REO. And FHA loans have much higher REOs. That is, they go to foreclosure rather than to loss mitigation or to non-foreclosure alternatives like short sales than comparable loans at the GSEs. So I'd like to know why we're having more foreclosures that end in people losing their homes with stains to their credit and disruption to their communities and their neighborhoods at FHA than we are at the GSEs.
All right. Again, Katie Porter, total boss, and actually literally had to explain a housing term to the head of housing and urban development while he's going on about Oreos. Oh, I like Oreos. I like cookies. Why don't I have some cookies? No, we're talking about something really important. That's people literally losing their homes through foreclosure. But again, you would think you would know about that. You think he would understand at least the very minimum about his job. But no, he doesn't because he's stupid. Or there's the other possibility. He doesn't care. Or both, he's stupid and doesn't care. I mean, it's the same guy, of course, who said the pyramids were built for grain storage. Not a very smart person. Now, that led Porter to go off later on after this went viral. She said, quote, "My questions were serious. They weren't actually designed to be funny." Well, no kidding. They were serious questions about a serious issue, foreclosure. It was Ben Carson that literally turned this into a circus. He said, quote, "He's clearly done absolutely nothing to even learn about this problem, much less address it." Now, she's got even more harsh statements about this, and I love the fire. Quote, "The result is that not only are families being put in foreclosure when we could have avoided it, lenders are paying higher costs, and the end result is taxpayer dollars are being misused. And we're ultimately reducing the supply of credit and the cost of credit to low-income homeowners." Again, that prevents people with lower incomes from actually being able to buy a home. She said that's a problem that should concern every American who wants to see this economy growing. And these are legitimate issues, especially as she points out, foreclosure seems to be the preferred method of homes that are FHA backed. Now, that's odd because the federal government wants to avoid losing money in foreclosure, right? And should be more than willing to work with borrowers to avoid that issue, except that that's not happening under Secretary Carson. They would rather go to foreclosure than do any sort of other mitigation. And Porter says also after this that she was insulted by Carson's lack of knowledge on this issue. Quote, "Mr. Carson did not only not know anything about this, but he told me it was my job to explain to him and come to HUD and teach his staff." No, that's your job. You're the head of HUD. That is your job to learn about this and then to explain to your staff. But he knows nothing because he's a political appointee. Now, Porter also said, that shows a real disrespect for the importance of this job to the American people. You know who else has also been in the job for years and hasn't learned how to do it? President Trump. And, of course, Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos is probably one of the bigger examples, even more so than Ben Carson, because she still literally knows nothing. She is more high profile than Carson, but just as dumb. This is a joke to them. They don't know anything about their respective departments, and they don't care to know about them. Now, this is evidenced by, of course, Carson later on sending a package of Oreos to Representative Porter. She said, quote, Mr. Carson, yesterday when I got back to my office, he had a package of Oreos delivered to me. But what I want from Mr. Carson is answers for the American people. There's another thing that Katie Porter also wants from Mr. Carson, and that's his resignation. Damn. She said, quote, I can't speak to President Trump's motives, but I can speak to the outcome to American families and businesses, which we are all losing by not having competent, strong, effective, intelligent leadership at HUD. And she said flatly that she does not believe that Carson should be able to hold his job. Dang. Now, when we talk about strength and leadership, this is what we mean as progressives. Katie Porter is actually fighting for the American people, while Ben Carson is dismantling the agency he was put in charge of and making ridiculous jokes about cookies and Oreos when it comes to people facing foreclosure, which is probably one of the worst things that can happen to you. It is very, very serious. Just ask people who've had to go through that process. They know how terrible it is. And yet, Carson's going to joke about it. But that's what happens when you put people in positions of power with the sole purpose of wrecking these agencies that are designed to help you so that government can be more ineffective. Again, that's the whole point. They want government to be ineffective so they can sell it off to private corporations. And they can make a buck. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. All right, one more story here. Real quick. More Ben Carson. Now, the internet had a field day after HUD Secretary Ben Carson was exposed again as a moron who cares nothing about housing policy. Now, as usual, it's progressives that gave Carson the hardest time, starting with Representative Ayanna Pressley, who said this.
Mr. Secretary, since I am short on time here, yes or no, is stable and safe housing a social determinant of health?
Sounds like you have not been here and heard most of my testimony.
Please just answer the question, reclaiming my time. Yes or no, is stable and safe housing a social determinant of health?
There is no question that housing is an important part of health.
Yes or no?
No question that it's a part of health.
It is well documented that health problems such as lead poisoning, asthma, and injuries from trips and falls, especially amongst our senior population, can be linked to substandard housing conditions. Combined, these conditions result in billions a year in healthcare costs. Many of those most at risk of developing these conditions reside in public and federally assisted housing. Yes or no? If left unaddressed, do you believe the substandard public housing conditions pose a risk to tenants' physical, mental, and emotional health? If left unaddressed.
Yes or no? Can you ask me some questions yourself?
You don't get to
Stop
dictate
reading
what my
this
line
other
of
stuff.
questioning is, reclaiming my time. You're a very smart
You can
man,
reclaim
so
it
you
all you want.
understand the question. Please answer it. Yes or no, if left unaddressed, which I believe they are unaddressed because this budget does not reflect the need, do you believe the substandard public housing conditions pose a risk to tenants' physical, mental, and emotional health?
You already know the answer to that.
Yes or no?
You know the answer.
Yes or no? I know the answer. Do you know the answer? Yes or no?
Reclaiming my time.
You don't get to do that.
The time belongs to the gentle lady.
You don't get to do that. Oh, I love it when progressives are strong. Ayanna Pressley coming out swinging. And Ben Carson, again, looking like an absolute idiot. Reclaiming my time. No. She can reclaim her time. And again, she took, she took no BS. Moving on. Let's get to the next question. Answer the question, or let's just go. And of course, he continued to dodge the question because he doesn't know. For two, he doesn't care at all when it comes to those questions. Now, Representative Katie Porter, of course, came out as well and asked tough questions about real estate owned properties, or REOs, and he confused it with a cookie. He started talking about Oreos. So now after that whole train wreck of a hearing, social media decided to pile on, starting with Representative Porter. She said this after she tweeted out a video of their exchange. Quote, I asked Secretary Carson about Oreos, basic term related to foreclosure, at a hearing today. He thought I was referring to a chocolate sandwich cookie. No, really. Yes, really. More tweets, and these are fun. Tim Rogers says, though to be fair, it's not like this is brain surgery. Lane Brooks says, does any Trump cabinet officer know anything about their jobs? Well, the answer to that, of course, is no. I mean, why would you need to know anything about the place you're there to destroy? It's the logical evolution of republicanism. Their entire ideology, if you look at it, is government doesn't work. Government bad. And so, of course, they make sure that to do everything in their power to make sure that it never works. They are political nihilists. Albus Dimpledot says, and that's a funny name, by the way, Stormy Daniels is the only person Trump ever hired who was qualified for the job. Bird. In his own right says, can we check those brain surgeon credentials on Ben? R. Bellingham says, while he's out buying $31,000 tables, which is true, I've waited 3 years for housing assistance as a disabled senior. That's terrible. Ken Montville says, damn it, Jim. I'm a retired neurosurgeon, not a housing expert. Kudos for the Star Trek reference. Jennifer Hayden says, every single member of the Trump's cabinet is uniquely and wholly unqualified for their roles, but perhaps none more unqualified than Ben Carson. No, I will actually disagree with that. I believe it's Betsy DeVos. She literally bought her seat. The only reason that Ben Carson is there is because Donald Trump, he's a racist, and he thought, oh, housing and urban development. Urban. I'll appoint the black guy. Come on. You know it. And then finally, Adam Best says, Ben Carson's Oreo gaffe, Betsy DeVos and her imaginary grizzly bear, Rick Perry not knowing the name of the department he oversees. It's time to cancel Who's the Dumbest Cabinet Member. After 2.5 seasons, it's gone on far too long. Agreed. This reality show is terrible. It has to end. And for God's sakes, hopefully, this election, or even beforehand, it does. All right. I'm out. Thank you guys for the show. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation, as well as becoming a channel member by hitting the join button. We are continuing to expand and work on new things, new features for you guys. The show will be posted in its entirety without ads up on our Patreon page, so you can watch it whenever you'd like. Again, without ads. That's just one of the things that I do for the patrons. So, thank you guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you guys tomorrow. TYT is next.